So the audience of this channel has historically contained similar amounts of man and women viewers, maybe skewing a little bit towards the man side. However, after the success of my Sam Harris video, there are a lot more dudes here now. And considering the types of dudes that are usually interested in Sam Harris and his cohorts, I'm guessing it's mostly straight dudes. Hi, I'm T1J.
Follow me.
So, this video is sponsored. Am I a real YouTuber yet? But for real, big shout outs to Yode Watches for sponsoring this video. Yeah, that's how it's pronounced. Yode makes these awesome handcrafted wooden watches. They're made from sustainable and ethically sourced materials. And they were even kind enough to send me one. And I love it. It's super dope. Yode also wants to hook one of you guys up. So for the next 2 weeks, if you click the link in the description below, you can enter my giveaway and one lucky person will receive $180 off of the price of a watch. And that actually covers the full price of many of them. Also for the next 2 weeks, anyone can simply enter the code T1J to get $25 off. So please check that out. Links in the description below. And thanks again to Yode for sponsoring. Now, a lot of you may not know this, but my channel used to be specifically targeted towards straight men. I used to make a lot of videos attempting to inspire young men to be more confident and ethical in their romantic and sexual relationships. In fact, one of the videos that I'm probably most associated with, and the one that definitely put me on the map as far as YouTube goes, is a perfect example of that. Don't watch that video, by the way. It's old and it's bad, and I kind of hate it now. These days, there are a few people out there who are giving good, non-toxic sex and relationships advice to men from the perspective of a man. Shout outs to Dr. Nerdlove. But I feel like this is a genre that is sorely lacking overall, which could be part of the reason why so many men just don't know how to act. Straight men are essentially brought up under the implication that women are prizes to be won and that we're entitled to this prize for some reason. And this sounds pretty bad, but I don't even think it's consciously malicious most of the time. I just think that we succumb to what I like to call straight dude logic. Like that one episode of The Office where Michael advises Jim not to give up on Pam even though she's engaged.
She's engaged. BFD, engaged ain't married.
That's terrible advice. You're just emotionally manipulating someone and complicating their life. Or like on Friends when Joey falls in love with Rachel and Ross totally freaks out, even though Ross has a girlfriend at this point and hasn't been with Rachel for literally 5 seasons.
Come on, Ross. Hey, Ross, I just have one. Rachel?
As usual, I tend to think in terms of old sitcoms. Forgive me. And I understand that these are fictional stories, but we accept and internalize things like this in our culture. Both Jim and Ross eventually get their respective girl in spite of these feelings of entitlement, as well as their obvious mediocrity. And as viewers, we're okay with it. We rooted for them. We're all like, oh my gosh, she got off the plane. If I'm being serious, I always get a little choked up when Rachel gets off the plane.
I got off the plane.
But I digress. This is sort of the attitude we've been taught as men. We deserve romance. We deserve sex. And sometimes we even feel like we get to pick who we deserve it from. Regardless of how shit we are at being human beings, we still somehow deserve romantic and sexual attention. So if we're not getting it, then something must be wrong, either with the women themselves or with society as a whole. And if you take ideas like that to the extreme, that's how you end up with toxic communities like pickup artists and incels. But like I said, there's not a whole lot of voices who are talking to men about issues like this in a way that's both constructive and accessible. Or at least if they do exist, I'm unaware of them. Feel free to enlighten me. Now, of course, there is no shortage of people yelling at straight men on the internet. And I guess this can be an effective way to make people more thoughtful about their behavior. I guess it depends on the person. But I think that usually this yelling is retributive rather than rehabilitative. And even if it wasn't, I've come to believe recently that shaming and ridiculing people generally fails to make them want to change their behavior. In fact, I think it often makes them more steadfast in their convictions. And on top of that, usually the people yelling aren't also straight men, which makes sense because straight men don't often have to deal with the consequences of the problematic behavior of other straight men, while other groups, like women, often do. But this is unfortunate because it's easier to get through to someone if you know what they've been through and you can empathize with their point of view. Now, I'm I'm not an expert on any subject, much less sex and relationships, but for all my friends out there who are straight men, let's talk for a second. And this stuff isn't exclusive to straight men, and it doesn't apply to all straight men. Hashtag not all men. Do I really have to do this? Yeah, it's the internet. I guess I do. But these are lessons that I personally had to learn, so hopefully it'll at least get you thinking. So when a woman is overtly sexual, it's usually seen by most people as remarkable and pretty unusual, whether in a good or a bad way. And if we're being honest, it's often a bad way. But with men, society doesn't seem to punish us or even notice us for being overtly sexual much of the time. Now, not all guys are like this, but in my experience, men are much more likely than women to be overtly sexual and talk about sex in public and talk about who they think is hot and who they want to fuck, or make sexual jokes or discuss the features of their own genitals in the Mexican restaurant in a booth right behind me like really do. I have no doubt that women are as likely as men to have sexual thoughts, but they seem much more likely to keep it to themselves or keep it among their trusted circle. But I get it. I'm very sexual myself. I'm very sex positive and open about sex. But I think the fact that there is rarely any social punishment for me being like that has a lot to do with it. I think that it's a good thing for people to be more open and communicative about sex. But this can be a hard thing to achieve because of the way that straight men come up thinking about sex and relationships with women. And I'm not immune to this. Whenever I see like a photo on social media of a woman that I think is really attractive, my brain has to muscle through a maze of straight dude logic. My brain's all like, wow, she's hot. Well, I obviously gotta say something. Girls like being told they're pretty, right? Girls like being told you want to right? But you gotta be smooth so as to differentiate yourself from the 100 other guys in this thread. Maybe you should send a private message. Maybe if you're extra charming, she might ask you to come over right now. Now this is obviously absurd, but I think a lot of very sexual people may have to process through this kind of horny mentality. But a lot of people seem to get stuck there and end up giving in to these ridiculous urges. If you've ever looked at the comment section on some women's photos, you'll understand what I mean. And in fact, when I was much younger, I often gave into these stupid urges and found myself saying and doing ridiculous, creepy shit all the time. Now, sometimes dudes are completely inappropriate and obviously out of line, but it's not always like that. Sometimes people give genuine compliments in a relatively civil way, and sometimes people are okay with that, but sometimes people aren't. And I don't think that women or anyone is required to graciously accept unsolicited flirtation or sexual advances. And to be honest, on a surface level, I think that most people understand that unwanted advances are undesirable, even if they are technically civil. Because I mean, think about if and when it happens to you. It's pretty awkward and obnoxious, right? And for many women, there's the added layer of the threat of violence upon handing out a rejection. Probably most dudes won't get violent, but if one decides to, there is often not a lot the women can do to defend themselves. So just imagine having that in the back of your head while some stranger is telling you that you're beautiful. This is why I think men have to think more carefully about how they are making women feel in these situations. But when we get deep into our feelings and our desires, we often don't consider how someone else might be feeling. If we get rejected or ignored, we often feel like something unfair has happened to us, even though that makes no sense because we're not entitled to someone else's attention or affection, no matter how nice or accommodating we are to them. Just like I said in that video I told you not to watch.
Dude, this is not a fucking transaction where you walk to the cashier and pull out your nice bucks and buy sex and romance.
So when disgruntled women are tweeting about how straight men are trash, it could come off as implying that having sexual or lustful urges is a bad thing, and that men can't truly be allies to the plight of women unless we get rid of these cravings somehow. Of course, I don't think that's the case, but here's the thing. We are human beings. And one of the useful things about being a human being is our capacity to change and control our behavior in spite of our impulses. If you're a good person, you should value the safety, comfort, and happiness of the people you interact with more than you value maybe getting sex? But here's the pill that might be hard to swallow. Maybe a swallowing metaphor isn't the best one for this particular video, but it's very possible and frankly probable that men who aggressively pursue sex likely receive it frequently. I mean, after a certain point, it's just playing the odds. But in pursuit of that, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of frightened, creeped out women left in their wake. Unfortunately, I know this from experience. And even among the ones who agreed to it, how many of them felt pressured? How many gave in just to avoid a fight? And I'm not even going to get into how many men seem to understand what really constitutes consent in the first place. Guys often tie some measure of personal value to their sexual success with women. That's why go-to insults for straight men often include calling them gay or making fun of their inability to get or keep a partner.
You claim to be a player, but I fucked your wife.
And don't get me wrong, sex is fucking dope. I personally think you should have as much consensual sex as you want. But it's not something to derive any fraction of your self-worth from. It's not the point of being alive. It's not even necessarily the point of forming relationships. It's clearly not so important that you should neglect to consider other people's comfort and well-being in pursuit of it, as I see people do very often, usually straight guys. I've been known to say stuff like, it's not that hard to be respectful, or it's not that hard to not be creepy. But I don't know, maybe for some people it is. Maybe a lot of men struggle to find a way to express their sexuality in a way that doesn't ruin other people's days/lives. So as with anything that's hard to do, I would suggest practice. Literally practice not being creepy. When you're presented with an opportunity to make a decision based on straight dude logic, instead, just don't. Try to always be mindful of what you're doing and what you're saying. Think about how the other person might feel. Even if nothing bad directly happens as a result of your behavior, it's still not a good look. You look foolish. It'll probably damage your reputation. Girls talk. The mere fact that you are attracted to someone does not entitle you to their attention. This seems pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many people really fail to internalize this. And I'm not saying you can't talk to women, or you shouldn't flirt with women, or you can't ask people out. The thing is, there's a time and a place, and there are respectful ways to do it. Like DMing random women on Instagram is probably not gonna get you anywhere. You look foolish. Maybe wait until you match with someone on Tinder. That's a more appropriate context. But even then, maybe don't tell the person that you want to within the first few messages. Also, and this is probably the most important part, you have to respect their right to say no if that's what they decide. I think sometimes in these like social, political, Me Too type conversations, people in positions of privilege, like straight people and men, might feel like in order to be perceived as non-problematic or as an ally, they must live up to some impossible standard of perfection. And I guess if you spend too much time on Twitter, I can see why you might think that. Please look away from the timeline every now and then. I promise there are people in the world who aren't lunatics. As a straight man, I understand where you're coming from. Maybe a lot of you guys out there are immune to straight dude logic and those creepy thoughts never enter your head. I'm not. I think publicly expressing sexuality as a man in a safe and healthy way can be difficult. And maybe that's a topic that we can talk more about in the future. But like most things, I think it boils down to respect and compassion for other human beings. Before you give in to that straight dude logic, consider how it might make someone else feel. That's just me though. What do you think? Thank you for watching my video. I'm really close to 100,000 subscribers, so if you liked what you saw, consider subscribing to help me reach that milestone. If you'd like to support this channel and help make the videos even better, consider donating a small amount per month on Patreon. Big shout outs to all of my existing patrons, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.